Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Keith, and welcome to my view from the 40. It is 1:15 here on the East Coast. You might be thinking, Keith, why aren't you sleeping? Sleep is the farthest thing from my mind right now. I will probably pay for that tomorrow afternoon. I got up this morning and I told you that today was going to be a special day. We had an amazing doubleheader on TSN of Friday Night Football. The Ottawa REDBLACKS hosting the Hamilton Tiger Cats, the BC Lions hosting the Edmonton Eskimos. You get a 2-for-1 because we're going to talk about both of them. Now, I was at the REDBLACKS game, thus the view from the 40-yard line, and we'll talk about the BC Lions game, which is more of a view from my couch, but we'll get to that in a moment. First of all, I want to dedicate this to Dum Dum. Dum Dum is the guy that sits behind me at REDBLACKS games and constantly whines and criticizes the REDBLACKS. I didn't know it, but apparently this guy is qualified to be a coach because every single play is second guessed. If they run the ball, oh, you guys suck, this is terrible. But then when they run the ball and they break off for like 20, 30 yards, all of a sudden he becomes silent. Let me clue people in, and I'm not trying to sound like a jackass, but let me explain something to you about this wonderful thing called the CFL. Games are not decided in the first drive. They're not decided in the first 10 minutes or the first half. Games in the CFL, very much at this time of year, are decided in the last minute, sometimes in the last few seconds. So if you're going to watch this game and support a team, you need to have a tough stomach. I was watching these posts on Our Nation earlier, and of course, you're hearing these comments like, oh, this sucks, I'm turning off my TV, I can't watch it. Well, if you turned off your TV when Ottawa was down 22-6, that's kind of sad, because I got news for you. They came back to win the game. Now, let's be clear, this was not the greatest performance that the Ottawa REDBLACKS have had all season, but they got the win, and that's what they're trying to do. I don't care if they're going to take home the award for most amazing performance. I care that they're taking home the win. Now, let's clear this up for everybody, and including the dum-dums. Now, what you need to know is that by Ottawa winning this game, they've pretty much guaranteed that they're going to be going to the Grey Cup. Let me explain. Next week, Ottawa goes to Hamilton. Let's say that Ottawa loses that game. So first of all, if they lose that game, don't go running onto Our Nation, bitching and moaning and putting the team down because the game is irrelevant. And I'll explain why it's irrelevant. If Ottawa loses next week to Hamilton, let's just say they do because Hamilton's a tough place to play. Even with that loss, all they need to do is beat Toronto the week after, and they're hosting the Eastern Final. The last several teams that have hosted the Eastern Final have gone on to the Grey Cup. Those teams being Toronto, Ottawa twice in a row. So the teams that host the Eastern Final go on to the Grey Cup. So let's all relax a little bit. So if they go into Hamilton next week and they win, then guess what? They're hosting the Eastern Final. I'm not saying it's a walk in the park winning the Eastern Final. I just like looking at history and probability. The other thing to keep in mind is, and I take no pleasure in this, Brandon Banks, the all-star slot back from Hamilton, is injured. I have a hard time seeing Hamilton excelling at the level that they've been without Brandon Banks in the picture. So again, good place for Ottawa to be in. So to all of the naysayers and all the people that are so fickle, and I'm so annoyed with always seeing these posts, toughen up. This is a good spot for Ottawa to be in. Ottawa came in and they were down, and once again they showed resilience. They showed it a few weeks ago in that Winnipeg game where they forced overtime, and they showed it again. And guess what? It really looks like the road to the Grey Cup is going to go through Ottawa. Let's talk about BC and Edmonton. By the time I got home, it looked like BC was going to go on this huge blowout. They were up 12-0. And then Wally Bono, the head coach of the BC Lions, said, okay, we counted to 10. You had your head start. Now we're coming to get you. I have no idea who Travis Lulay was tonight. Don't get me wrong. I think he's one of the best quarterbacks in the league. But it's like all he wanted to do tonight was just throw deep balls. And those deep balls that he was throwing were connecting, and they were going in for touchdowns. BC, I don't want to say shock the world because they've been fantastic at home. They lived up to what they do at home by taking out the Edmonton Eskimos, thus punching their ticket into the playoffs. And I couldn't be happier. It's like all of a sudden everybody in that organization realized this is Wally's last season, and we are going to put everything on the line for him. We saw it last week in the Calgary game. We saw it tonight with Edmonton. So BC's in the playoffs. Where they finish, we're going to find out over the next few weeks. But again, for a day that started off with a lot of angst and anticipation and a little trepidation has ended with nothing but happiness. On the one hand, we've got the Ottawa REDBLACKS, who are now in firm control of their own destiny as it relates to where they will finish off, not only in the Eastern Division, but again, punching that ticket to a trip to Edmonton in November. And the BC Lions are in the playoffs and one of the hottest teams in the CFL, taking out Calgary and Edmonton. They've got games against Saskatchewan and Calgary remaining. I'm very excited to see those. So that's my take on everything. What's yours? Feel free to reach out to me, CFL_fan on Twitter, Facebook.com/WhittyWhittier and WhittyWhittier.com. Thank you so much for checking this out. My name is Keith, and that's my view from the 40.